you can start to put mindsets together and see how they interact. For example, two that we talk about a lot that come together in a really important way is accepting risk and pivoting fearlessly. If you accept risk and can't pivot, you're reckless. But if you accept risk, really smart, calculated risk as a way that you think about running your business, and then you use data to pivot when new information comes in to get smarter and smarter and adjust course, it's a really powerful way of conducting your business. And that's just two that come together. You can make lots of different permutations between the 12.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Amanda Sorrento, who's the Vice President and HR Business Partner for R&D at Moderna, and Noah Rabinowitz, who's the Vice President of the Moderna University. During the episode, Amanda and Noah share how the Moderna mindsets act as a North Star, operating system and code to their culture. They talk about how the run, build and rebuild philosophy increases the pace of innovation and challenges the status quo, how the COEs and HRBPs are partnering for success, and how the Moderna University is elevating the role that learning plays in our business, strategy, culture, science, and lives. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Noah, Amanda, welcome to the show. How are you both?
Doing great, thank you.
Nice to see you.
Yep, doing good, Chris. Good to be here.
Nice to have you back, Noah. I've said just before we hit record, I was like, you were 6 months in when we last spoke. You're still here, which is a good sign. It's always a good sign.
Still here. Yeah, still here and still super excited to be on this journey.
Yeah.
And really excited to talk to you today.
No, interesting. I'm so excited to hear what you've been up to. And I obviously noticed that your job title's changed now. Vice President at Moderna University. Is that a new addition?
I started with the title of VP of Learning and Development.
Yeah.
Then I went to VP of Learning and Development and Moderna University. And so now I've decided to simplify to just VP of Moderna University. I feel like it encompasses everything I've got going on.
Yeah.
And really kind of sums up the learning work we're doing. So, and it also generates a lot of good conversation.
I was about to say, it probably is a conversation starter as well. Amanda, before we jump in, tell everyone a little bit more about you personally and your sort of journey so far at Moderna to where we are now.
Absolutely. So I am the VP of R&D HR. So I'm their HR business partner. Been with Moderna since just after the pandemic started, and we really started the build of the organization. So I joined in July of 2020. So almost 3 years in, and we have really got to see this organization scale up from about 900 employees when I joined to, now we're tipping the scales close to 4,500. So wow. It's been a crazy, wild, and fun ride over the last 3 years.
Yeah. Well, you're both still smiling. So that's always a good...
Oh, absolutely.
For anyone who's on the audio and can't see that, they're smiling right now. As well, you still got your energy and in passion. And look, we'll pretend for a second that Noah's not here, but how's it been partnering with Noah?
Oh, it's great. It's so... No, Noah's a great partner and a great addition. And I think something that we really have wanted to build in our organization. We've always had this mindset of learning in the organization, and that's how we've done a lot of what we've done. And now to have an expert like Noah really come in and formally build that out, it's just awesome.
Yeah. And that kind of goes back to our original conversation, Noah, the first podcast. But recap that for everyone. What was it that attracted you to the organization to come in and join?
Yeah, so many things. And I think it's something that Amanda and I share is kind of what attracted us here and what keeps us here and what engages us so much is that first, the mission and purpose of the company is truly, truly transformational. It is a company that is looking to reinvent human health on a level that is hard to imagine sometimes, hard to fully comprehend. But the potential to just make this massive global impact on the way we do human health is one of the things that just gets me out of bed every morning. And then the culture, and I know we'll talk a lot about culture, but it is truly a unique, differentiated culture, and we want to keep it that way. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the things that we work on are focused on really developing our culture. And when you combine a great mission and purpose with great leaders, with a great culture and the freedom to innovate, it's just a formula for engagement. That's the reason we're smiling.
I was gonna let jump into it later, but let's jump into it straight away. Like I was reading through your Moderna mindsets earlier. In fact, it impressed me so much that I said to Shane, my co-founder, I feel like we need to revisit our why our values are perfect, because I just love the way you've laid it out. I love the videos. You created some videos on YouTube I came across which really explain what you mean, because sometimes when you read values, you can people can interpret it in different ways, if that makes sense. And I love the fact that you took the time to create those small micro videos on YouTube that I accidentally came across in Google search. I was like, oh, they made videos for all these things. So could you just walk us through the process, and then also how you went about listening and making sure that you built these around the employee sentiment and what you were hearing internally?
So, the beauty of those mindsets are they're really grounded. So, we're about a 12-year-old company, and those mindsets are really grounded in how, from the very beginning, this company has operated as an organization. So if you go and you talk to anybody who's been here, and call it like pre-pandemic, right? So call it the people before we really started our massive growth. When they look at those mindsets, they're very obvious to them. They would say, "Yeah, these are the ways in which we've always worked." And so as we really rapidly grew and we rapidly scaled, it became apparent that we needed to actually write them down, because usually culture is passed down, right, from leader to employee and then employee to employee. We grew so quickly that we were so quickly outnumbering those employees who had been here and understood that this was always the way, kind of Moderna worked. And so that's really how the mindsets, were generated and became written down and then became the videos. So that way we can help all the employees who are joining really understand what I think of as like our secret sauce. And I think what makes us so unique and special as an organization, and I echo what Noah said, it's one of the things I absolutely love about being here, is this deeply ingrained culture as driven through the mindsets, is that we truly believe that our culture is what drives our success. It's what enables us to do, have amazing science. It's what enables us to then, create a vaccine in under a year, which was unheard of, and especially being as small as we were at the time. It's what enables us to go out in the marketplace head to head with a Pfizer day in and day out, which is 10 times the size of what we are, probably bigger. I actually don't know the right statistic there, but it's those mindsets and people acting in according with those mindsets. And so where a lot of companies will write down their values and you can interpret them, and they're big and they're broad. We've all worked for those companies. And you actually get in there and you get into that company and you're like, yeah, I kind of see where the values come in. You walk into Moderna and you feel the mindsets every day in action. They're not just words on a paper. They really truly are how people operate here. So I think that makes us very unique and special as an organization. Noah, please feel free to add anything on there or correct me if I got stuff wrong.
Nothing wrong. I just agree. It's we sometimes, Chris, call them our operating system or the code to our culture. And I really like the analogy of an operating system because there's 12 and they work together in really interesting combinations to power our success, to power our capability. And so you can start to put mindsets together and see how they interact. For example, two that we talk about a lot that come together in a really important way is accepting risk and pivoting fearlessly. If you accept risk and can't pivot, you're reckless. But if you accept risk, really smart, calculated risk as a way that you think about running your business, and then you use data to pivot when new information comes in to get smarter and smarter and adjust course, it's a really powerful way of conducting your business. And that's just two that come together. You can make lots of different permutations between the 12. So No, I completely agree with Amanda. I think it really does give us a unique way of thinking about how we run our business and scale our culture. And it's a skill, right? Using these mindsets is definitely a skill that we're working on developing.
I love the fact that on the website you put at the top, it says clarifying our culture. And then below it says these mindsets are tools we're using to build it together. And I just love the fact, to your point, they are tools and they're skills. And I love the fact that you took time to clarify this is what our culture is. You're very intentional about it as well.
Yeah.
And
And
also,
they're aspirational
yeah,
also. We don't feel like we've arrived. And I think, I had a career in consulting for many years. So I got to see many companies and how they use, whether you call them values or guiding principles or
mm-hmm.
whatever name they give it. And a lot of times people in the organization look at them and roll their eyes because they're like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not the lived reality.
Yeah.
And it feels hypocritical almost, and they actually end up having a negative effect. It's like, oh, I see this thing, but I don't experience this thing in my daily life. We understand that we're never truly there, so we have to work through storytelling, through capability development, through training, through learning, through leadership. We have to build this operating system and scale it, because like Amanda said, we're a growing organization, so we got lots of new people coming in that need to learn this operating system. We've got we're a rapidly scaling organization, so we have to be really intentional about how we bring that code into our daily lives.
Yeah. No, if I can add on to that too, just in terms of, at the company level, we don't ever feel like we fully arrived, but we also don't expect any employee to be able to be great at all 12 of them as well. I think that's another beauty of these mindsets, is that we all have our different strengths. And so we look to capitalize on the strengths that people have, or their ability to know how to pull in one mindset versus the other, given the situation that they've got at hand. Mm-hmm. But we're never on this mission to say everybody has to be able to nail all 12 of those mindsets, because that's just impractical. And then we believe we'll just end up coaching everybody to, kind of the middle. If you try to be great at 12 things, you're going to be, probably okay to good at them. But how do we really leverage where people are truly great, and then pair them up with people who are great at different mindsets to really be able to get the most out of them?
That's such a good point, right? Because we normally see them in the past and we're like, wow, that's a lot to live up to, and to be great at. So I'm glad that you made that point, because it is pretty unrealistic to be great at every single thing. It's kind of overwhelming, but there's strength in that difference, and then that encourages that partnerships, the innovation, the collaboration when you look at it through that lens. Instead, I love the fact that you have things in there like we accept risk. You just don't see that within companies within your industry. I can tell you that if I go through all of your competitors list, that they won't have we accept risk and we pivot fearlessly. Some of the things that are in here, we behave like owners. I love that one personally. It's probably one of my favorites. It's something that I try to speak with the team about here, is having that real sense of ownership and going beyond the job. And so, some of the things that I saw when I came in here, I wasn't expecting, but in a good way.
No, they definitely are unique.
Yeah. How are you then taking these and then going, from this and implementing that into the business from a practical point of view? For example, what does it look like for someone who's just joining the business?
So we use lots of different mechanisms to bring the mindsets into the business and the culture. And like Amanda said, we're always experimenting. Again, I would just emphasize it over and over that one of the things I love about working here is the freedom to innovate. So we're trying things with the mindsets, and we're like, okay, that worked really well. Maybe this one didn't work as well. Let's do more of this, less of this. And it's just iterative. It's highly, highly iterative. And we're trying to get smarter about this operating system as we go. That said, we from the very beginning of a person's employment here, they are getting exposure and immersion really into the mindsets. Our Moderna One onboarding experience has a large segment dedicated to culture and the mindsets, and it's immersive. It's not a teaching experience. It's hands-on. experiential. With a large part of our executive population, we do a kind of self-assessment on the mindsets. We coach people around the mindsets. We use storytelling. We use a case study methodology to teach chapters in our history. For example, the COVID chapter, which was a pretty formative period in our history, to tell that story, to have people all really also bring the mindsets out to kind of interpret them themselves.
Yeah.
Because you've really got to understand them through the power of interpretation and making them your own, and putting them in the context of your own lived experience. So we're using lots of different capabilities and tools to bring the mindsets to life.
Beyond, all of the more structured learning programs, there's just the practical things that we do every day too that layer into it. And one of the most simple examples is how we interview. And so we have a broad panel. Before we interview, we assign mindsets to the panel that interviews. And then when we do the debrief, we explicitly talk about what mindsets we saw, where we saw the strengths in the candidate, where we saw the gaps. And as much as we assess for the functional capability of the role, I would say we assess even harder for that cultural fit. And did we feel like we could see the mindsets in that candidate? And we're not afraid as an organization, if we've got a candidate who's a great functional expert, but we don't see them leaning into the mindsets, or we don't see where they're going to be able to adapt to the way we operate. Because let's be honest, nobody comes in with all of them, because it is a very unique, culture. But can we see, kind of the desire to learn them? Can we see them leaning in? Can we see the raw makeup in that person that says they're going to be able to demonstrate these mindsets? If we don't feel like they have it, we're not afraid to pass up on a candidate, even if they have all the right functional expertise. So it starts very early in the process. And then we, bring them on to that onboarding program that Noah talked about, and then continue to, just through real, life experiences on the job, continue to bring that forward until they're eventually, a culture carrier for us as well.
In addition, I saw something the other day, very experimental, still very early stage, but it got me super excited, which is using a chat GPT type tool internally, where you can upload transcripts. You could even upload, for example, the transcript of this podcast, and there's a logic built into it to understand which mindsets the person might be demonstrating.
Wow.
And so you can get real-time feedback through a generative AI capability that says, this person's really demonstrating obsessing over learning. This person's really demonstrating acting like an owner, because we're seeing things in what they're saying and articulating in real time. And I was like, okay, now we're getting into it. Now this is cool, and it got us really excited.
Because I was going to ask you how you measure that and how you test for that. I was going to ask that, and this is where technology can come in and help, right? To be able to do that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Technology can play a huge role. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I already do that with my transcripts from the podcast. So I take the transcripts from my podcasts. I ask them to put it into kind of bite-sized key takeaways, which I can then use when I publish it on our website or on LinkedIn. So I say, take this transcript and write a LinkedIn article using this transcript, and it will condense it into, here's the 5 key takeaways from this podcast. And it's like, normally that would have taken me hours, for hours and hours and hours. And even if it's not perfect, right, it gives me that 70%. It's done 70% of the hard work, and then I can go in and improve that. But yeah, that sounds like the fact that you can train the AI with all of those. How many was it? 7, 8? Sorry, I forgot now. 12. No, how many?
12.
12. Yeah, 12. Yeah.
12 mindsets.
I was like 7, 8. I was like, no, it's 12. 12. The fact that you can train the AI with those 12 mindsets and to look for that, is just incredible to be able to do that. So I'm assuming a lot of the work then is with the line managers, because that's really where a lot of the experience and the interaction with employees, right? So what kind of training and development are you doing with those leaders to help them?
And you're right, Chris. I mean, the managers are the kind of the front line of the employee experience and the front line of the culture. And we've recognized that. And Amanda talked about our growth, right? Well, we've got over 1,300 managers now. So we're at a level of
Wow.
scale in terms of the number of managers that are affecting that everyday culture.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a role in hiring others. They have a role in doing performance management. They have a role in giving coaching, feedback, setting goals, doing OKRs, resolving problems, coaching, driving the business really. And so your managers need to be role modeling and embodying those mindsets. And that is a big lift, especially when you've got 1,300 of them around the world. So we've started a managers academy, which is inside of our Moderna University structure. The managers academy is about 5 or 6 months in at this point. We've been emphasizing the experimental approach. We're taking a very experimental approach, seeing what's working. We've done work on coaching, on feedback. We are doing a very immersive session for our people managers on innovation and innovative ways to problem solve, called Leading for Innovation. We are also using some digital coaching tools. BetterUp had a great experience with them, and maybe I'll pass it over to Amanda because the partnership between us, at me leading a COE and Amanda being in the business as a business partner. We agree on the need and the importance of a scalable managers academy.
Yeah.
So I kind of am working on building the systems and processes and tools and programs, and she's really bringing the voice of the manager and this need. I mean, Amanda has been really beating the drum of the need for manager capability development.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I can, I'll add a couple of things onto this. So I think a lot of companies, I've worked with different companies and everybody has, their version of manager academy. And but I would double down on ours are really centered around our culture and how we want to lead in a very unique way. And so part of the remit here is really understanding, what are those unique things that we need our managers to be doing to really be leading in the way that's akin or aligned with our culture. And so most of what we're doing can't be off the shelf products because we don't actually see management in the same, kind of traditional way that companies have been training against for 20 years. We see it as very unique, very Moderna specific, and that directly links to all of the mindsets. How do you make decisions, as an example, how do you make decisions in an environment where we do accept risk, where you do pivot fearlessly? How do you give feedback to your employees? There's an element of our culture of we're very we want to be and we do model a very honest, direct feedback approach. And so how do you train managers to be able to have a very open conversation with their employee on what they're doing well, where their gaps are, how you're going to help them, but in a very uniquely Moderna way? And you're just not going to find that training pre-built from most vendors. It's something that we're going to really have to create or co-create with an outsourced partner. And then, part of my role as the HRBP is how do I take all of this great work that Noah and his team are doing and pull that into the business. I've actually shifted my team a bit, and I'm going to have roles on my team that are, yes, focused on, kind of working day to day with the managers, but really a huge piece of their objectives are going to be taking the great stuff that Noah's creating and that people may be going through on an enterprise level, and then figuring out how do you really apply that in an R&D setting and pulling that through and making that a very specific focus of an HRBP and really trying to get them out of that. How do I coach every manager one-to-one in a moment, but how do I actually build, focus building that capability in a very R&D centric way?
I love that, and I love the fact that like everything links back to the Moderna mindsets, and then it kind of becomes part of the culture itself, just ingrained. And if you
Yeah.
at every touch point of the employee journey or experience, you're constantly linking it back. So it comes to the point where it just becomes the Moderna way.
It's the code to our culture. That's,
Yeah.
that's the way we refer to it. And if you look at institutions that have scaled and that institutions that have stood the test of time and reinvented themselves over and over, they have something that anchors them and says, this is the unique thing about our organization that we believe is truly the differentiation of how we do it. And otherwise, you're going to regress to the mean, and you're just going to become average. And average in our industry, there's some great companies that are average. I mean, average is still pretty good, but we have no desire to be average. We have the desire to be highly differentiated, in an elite organization, a high performing organization that is making this impact on the world and on the health of our patients. And so we have to push, we have to perform, we have to get better. But you also need something, a North Star that says this is the way we do it. And that's the role that the 12 Moderna mindsets really play for us.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, Chris. It's all very intentional, right? So if we start with those 12 mindsets, it then becomes, as you pull that into, our piece of the business, the HR piece, it's about what are then the people philosophies that inform, and then our people platform, and really ensuring we have these red threads, no matter what we're pulling together, whether it's on how we hire, whether it's on talent, whether it's, what Noah's building from a learning perspective, or how we think about well-being. It's all anchored in this people platform, which stems from the culture and the people philosophies it informs.
I love that. I love the fact that even when you're assessing technology, you're looking at it through that lens as well. It's so unique, because sometimes we can get lost in all of the different products, solutions, and technologies, but you probably filter out half of those immediately, or more than half immediately, by going, is it in line with these 12? If it's not, then we don't even need to have a conversation about it. Yeah, it makes decision making a lot easier as well, right? Because you always know where, even if there's chaos and ambiguity, you can always kind of come back to that foundation of like, this is where we operate from in terms of our decision making.
Well, Amanda mentioned a platform, and that's the idea of systematizing this across the employee life cycle, right? So that it's built into your reinforcing systems from hiring all the way through to when you're leaving the company and everything in between. And that journey, that platform has got some predictability to it, and that you can innovate on that platform, because platform we're a platform company. We are not a product company. So building platforms is what we do. So we're thinking about a lot of the systematization of the culture into the people platform, and making it scalable, making it predictable, and making it really powerful. And also continuing to take that experimental approach to it, right? Using new information, using our experience, using feedback, using listening to our employees as the way to just make it better and better and better and better. Which also, we talked a little bit about, some of the external partners that we have. It makes working with us, I'd say, really rewarding, but also kind of really hard.
I was going to say, this all sounds great, but I'm sure it can't be easy, right? Because it
can't be easy, because the way we onboard partners is we kind of just don't want generic solutions. We want to do it our way, and we've got a defined way of doing it. And so bringing on board a partner to say, come on this journey with us, means there's a lot of upfront investment. There's a lot of time. There's a lot of understanding. There's a lot of mistakes that are going to be made. And not every partner out there has a business model that's set up to do that.
Yeah, many of them are the opposite of what you're describing.
Exactly.
Well, because it takes time, energy, and exactly. Is that one of the reasons why you chose BetterUp? Because they are quite well known for that from the other clients that I've spoken to and worked with.
They've definitely spent a lot of time and energy getting to know us pretty well, and they've invested in us for sure.
Good. Yeah, good to hear. Tell us a bit more about the Moderna University and what you're building there.
Yeah, so Moderna University is kind of the flagship brand for all things learning and development at Moderna. We have a huge vision for the university. I know we've spent most of our time on this call so far talking about the internal kind of application of the university, growing our people, developing our people, scaling our culture. But there's this other half to the vision of Moderna University, which is equally as powerful, which is that we as a company have this amazing concentration of expertise. We have really smart, talented people working here, some eminent people in their fields, and we have the ability to contribute knowledge and education to the world. And because of the role we played in the pandemic, there is a desire to kind of know what's going on at Moderna, and to serve as a type of a beacon of leadership, research, knowledge, culture. So we're looking at part of our strategy for the university is what we call pushing beyond our walls, which is really about going external, which is something that in the tech space, if you look at Google's relationship with Coursera, for example, they have really delivered, a huge amount of upskilling to the world on things like UX and data and analytics and project management. We have a similar vision to bring our knowledge and expertise out to the world, out to talent pipelines, because we know we want to reach people that are coming from non-traditional sources, diverse talent pipelines. And so the university is meant to be a university. Really, it's
in the name.
It resembles an academic institution in a lot of different ways. We have colleges, we have deans, we have research, we have development, we have events, we have programs, we have a course catalog, we have a digital platform, we have a campus that we're building. And sometimes when I talk with people about this, I say the only thing that's really distinguishing us at this point from a real university, if you want to call it that, is we don't issue degrees. But we're starting with digital badges, and pretty soon we'll be giving out career certificates, and those are starting to play almost this like degree type of role in the world. So I think someday, in the not so distant future, Moderna University will be a university.
Wow.
And it's going to be a really powerful part of our business and kind of part of our employee value proposition, part of our employee experience. It's just it's thrilling. It's so cool to work on it.
Did you want to add anything to that, Amanda? Before I go.
No, I think you did a great job.
Yeah. There's a lot there. Yeah, so many questions to unpack there. Like because when I first heard about it, I my initial thoughts was that you were using this as also as a talent pipeline to develop talent. Yeah. Just to bring in, but it's so much more than that of what you just said as well. How is that going to work? Are you going to like partner with the community and other institutions of the community, or can anyone anywhere in the world access it? If that makes sense, what is the approach?
We want to do both. And in some ways are already doing both. It's, there are MOOCs out there that allow you to reach millions and millions of people now. So you can deliver knowledge and education out to the world through all kinds of channels. And you can also work through things like apprentice programs and community colleges and technical colleges and co-ops. And so there's lots of ways of reaching people with the things that we have expertise in, where that unique contribution that we can make to talent pipelines to the world. So yeah, we really have a big vision for what the role that the university can play in our strategy.
One of the things, if I can add, it's early days on this, but one of the things we talk about in terms of the reach too is not just, in the community at large, but also how do we support other, kind of startup biotechs as well with some of our learnings where we have, kind of the ability to create this, and some of these smaller companies don't necessarily. And so how do we also reach out to them and give them access to some of the stuff that we're creating? And I think that only goes to continue to reinforce, kind of where we come from at our core here at Moderna, which is, we're really trying to help society, right? We believe we have a platform that really reaches into patients. And if we can help other biotechs with similar type missions, that's only good for
Everyone.
humans and patients and everybody. And so how do we leverage the privilege that we have in terms of, where we've been able to grow and scale to help other companies that can then help society?
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought it up, by the way, because it's so important. And again, a lot of companies say that in their values, but they don't really deliver on it. And you're really demonstrating that. I was speaking to a CHRO from a very large cybersecurity company recently, and they have their own internal university that they actually take graduates, and even if they have even if you haven't even gone to school, you can even apply for their program, and they put them on a 3-year course, and half of it is educational, which is also internally in the company, and the other half is practical apprenticeship style. And they say that at the end, something like more than 50% actually go to competitors, and I was like, that's crazy. And then I know, Chris, this is by design. I was like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? Because Chris, it's our job to help upskill the cybersecurity leaders of tomorrow, regardless of where we're at for us, our competitors, our partners, our customers. And it just kind of just took me back. And they're like, and again, that was part of their why, their purpose statement and their missions and values. Like, Chris, these are our values, so we have to demonstrate that in our actions. And I thought that was absolutely incredible. So like, they said to me, Chris, we don't even have enough places free, even if we wanted to hire everyone that we have, but that's not what it's about. But she was saying the amount of them that want to stay, of course, after their retention is crazy. Also, the interactions that even when those students will go and work for a competitor or a customer, they'll naturally want to work with them because they help develop them. So it's hard to measure everything, but really, to your point, it's bigger than just the organization. It's about really making an impact and living up to the values.
It's about the role that you play in the world and kind of how you think about your mission. And if your mission is truly driven by patients and human health, you're going to look for other ways than just putting medicine out into the marketplace. You're going to look for other ways to, and we believe so strongly in our mission, and we have such a strong culture that we think we can influence the industry in other ways and almost even have that responsibility.
Yeah.
So the role that the university plays in that is really, really powerful and really engaging. And we want people to be inspired and to look at Moderna as a source of knowledge, a source of talent, a source of exporting that, not just pulling it in and keeping it all for ourselves and having that proprietary mentality that's just about that scarcity mindset. It's just not who we are.
I'd love to talk in terms of, I know people are probably listening thinking, this university, is that something you built yourself?
So I would say built would be the wrong word because that's past tense. It's
okay.
It's building.
That's true.
We are actively building. But we have a lot of partners. We have a lot of partners, and again, the university consists of curriculum. It consists of physical spaces, digital spaces, programming, and it's an ecosystem for sure. It's a complete ecosystem. Absolutely.
Because I was thinking, like, everything you're describing doesn't fit within one vendor or one partner. That doesn't, unless I've missed something, that doesn't exist. So I imagined it was a combination of multiple partnerships and building that together. Let's talk about.
Never be built.
Yeah,
Noah.
Yeah, building continuous. Yeah, it's always going to be evolving. I'd love to talk about your the philosophy, the run, build, rebuild philosophy. Could you share more about that with our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, I can take a stab in terms of, starting that with, kind of just real practical in terms of what it looks like. So if I could, paint a little bit of a picture here. When I joined the organization back in 2020 in R&D. Well, let's talk about development. I think we had about 50 people in development at that time, and we were about to launch a massive phase three trial. And for anybody who's in the industry will know, the fact that we had about 50 employees sounds just absolutely just wild to even think that we were going to launch the phase three trial that we did at that point in time. When we close this year, just for perspective, we'll probably be well over 1,000 employees in development alone. So in 3 years' time, going from 50 employees to well over 1,000 employees. And so, I think that really captures, kind of that run, build, rebuild from the standpoint of, go back to 2020, we had real work we had to get done. We were trying to help the world out of this pandemic, which meant the leaders with what they had to run the business while they were also building the capabilities that were needed to be able to do the work. So a very unique challenge that, I would venture to guess, almost 99% of those leaders had never fully had, right? Which is, how do you run and build all at the same time? And they did it amazing, right? Look what they delivered. There's no arguing those results, but very unique, very challenging experience to be able to run and build. What's really interesting now, 3 years later, is as we're moving on to our next, kind of phase of growth and our next part of the journey, we're asking our leaders to take a step back and look at what they built over the last 3 years and ask themselves, is that also what we need to continue building for the next 3 years to get to achieve what we think we're capable of achieving? Or do they actually have to go into their organization and pivot, to use that mindset, and rebuild their organizations? Now, I don't want to miscapture that as saying or making it sound like that's a negative, because it's not, but it's really a moment in time where we're asking our leaders to really reflect and say, okay, what got us here is amazing. Is it what's going to get us to that next, phase of growth? Or do they actually have to go in and rebuild a bit for the next 3 years? And it's a tough thing for leaders to do. I already mentioned it's tough to run and build at the same time, but now for them to actually go in and look at, what they've built and mentally say, okay, but is that the right thing for the next 3 years, or do I have to pivot it again? Is just another, kind of layer of challenge that we're asking our leaders to go through. But it's kind of the source of innovation and, constantly be challenging ourselves. It's why I made the joke earlier about Moderna University never being built, in the past tense. We're constantly in this rebuild of like, what's the next wave? How do we need to change it? How do we need to pivot? How do we need to operate differently? Because it goes back to the old adage of like, what got you here won't get you there.
I mean, there's another one of the 12 mindsets that we haven't really talked about as much today, which is dynamic range. And dynamic range is really around being able to operate on those 3 dimensions: run, build, and rebuild. And it is hard. I'm going to agree with Amanda on that. It's hard because you are an operator, also a strategist, and also thinking about the disruptive technologies and models that are going to power the future all at the same time, all wrapped up into one person. And I can say just, from building a learning organization, I mean, I am way down in some really operational stuff: program scheduling, room booking, catering, materials, audiovisual setups, leases, getting purchase orders out the door. And I'm like, okay, cool. At the same time that we're thinking about the spaces and places of the future, the use of the metaverse, the use of virtual reality technologies, nano learning, micro learning, AI, you go home some days and you're like, oh my God, my brain's going to explode. Because you're like living in these very different worlds. of heavy duty operational work, heavy duty strategy and innovation work. And then when you think you've got it figured out and you're like, okay, this thing's starting to work out for me, boom, you gotta break it and rebuild it to build it for the next chapter of growth. So it's super challenging, but also super rewarding, super engaging. And when you have a great team around you, you just kind of get fired up around it, and it really gives a lot of inspiration.
Noah, Amanda, you've finally given me the words to describe when people ask me, what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? And I really, I'm being honest, like you perfectly encapsulated it. I always struggle to describe where, to your point, you're like deep in the weeds and then, an hour later you're in the sky looking down. It's like, yeah, I've always struggled to explain it, but now I'm going to be like, run, build, rebuild. Like it's such a great way of encapsulating that. And the part that I'll be honest, I'm not great at, which you mentioned, is taking a step back. Like you mentioned, to look at, Marshall Goldsmith, what got you here won't get you there, right? Me and Shane are not great at that, and we're trying to get better at taking a step back and reflecting. And because
we're happy to give you some coaching.
Yeah, because we're so busy running 1,000 miles an hour in one direction to build the business. Sometimes we don't take a step back to actually, to your point, to do that, and that's where we get tripped up. So it just made me really think about that a lot. But I really relate to what you're saying. And as leaders, it's really hard to be in both places at the same time, both headspaces.
Well, one of the humbling parts about it in leadership, there's a dominant logic of as I grow up my leadership, I move out of the operational and move into the strategic. I kind of earned my way to be strategic, but we don't buy into that. We believe that a great leader needs to be at both ends of that spectrum. You got to be in the details. You have to know your business. You have to act like an owner. And you have to be creating the conditions.
I'll give you an example today, right? Like before we hit record, I told you that my producer had to leave. And I made it my mission that when we built the studio, that I understood every single piece of technology, the hardware, the software. I spent probably 100 hours sitting there watching videos about how our production desk works, how the cameras work, how our digital screens work, all of the technology behind it. And today I had to step up and actually figure out how to do everything. But it's a perfect example. And I've had a few people actually ask me, like, why do you do that? You're the CEO. You don't need to. I get joy out and satisfaction, to be honest. I love it. And people like, really? Like my wife saw me watching a 4-hour video the other day on YouTube, like a really in-depth detail about the new software that we've implemented to run the whole studio. She's like, is that not boring? I was like, no, I love it. Like, I can't wait to go and play around and bring it to life. And no, that's not even my job. I will very rarely ever have to touch it. But to your point, I love being in the weeds sometimes.
What's funny about that is when you were telling us that story before we started, mentally I was going, oh, dynamic range in action.
So again, you could link it back, right? Again, it's the important part. And that's another thing, like again, as entrepreneurs, I sometimes just struggle to define those moments where in your case, you could immediately make that connection to one of those 12, which is really important. Sometimes people like, reason I love the fact that you had the videos is it really kind of puts it into context of what you mean by each of those 12, because it can be taken out of context on people's interpretation. But like, no, this is what it is. This is very clear, very intentional about that. And that's so important because it creates that common language throughout the whole business, that when someone says that, they know exactly what you mean as well. I'm sure it must help from a remote perspective with a hybrid workforce, because again, when you're remote and you're not in the workplace, you have to be even more clearer in terms of your systems, processes, why, purpose, because that then becomes sort of the glue and connective tissue that brings everyone together, even if you're working in different parts of the world.
So I started during the pandemic when everybody was remote. And it was hard, for that first year to really get a full grasp of who Moderna was, how we operated. And I'm just saying this from my experience, as an employee. And then coming back in and being able to see people and being able to touch it, feel it, be a part of it, changed my whole perspective on this company. I knew the company was awesome. I knew it was great. I knew we had amazing science and the leaders seemed really great, but I didn't feel like I could fully appreciate the culture or adapt myself, probably more importantly, adapt myself into, kind of how to operate within those mindsets, until I actually was able to come in and experience. So you're absolutely right. That language is super important as we've grown globally, because when we think about, we were talking about the office that we're, the opening up in Harwell, we want those employees to operate from those same set of 12 mindsets. And so having this strong language and all of the programming that we're doing is so important, for people to really understand it. The other thing we really do is try to get people to come in, to Cambridge very early in their tenure with Moderna, no matter where they sit in the globe, so they can have that firsthand experience learning, truly understand it from their colleagues around them. It is so hard, but it's so important to us.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love it. I feel like if I didn't ask you about AI, I would be missing something here, Noah. So I'm going to jump in. We mentioned ChatGPT earlier, briefly. I'd love to sort of hear about how you're thinking about AI in talent, and also how that flows into the academy, etc.
We've been talking about AI for a while now. So I know there's sort of like a frenzy happening with AI at the moment, but we've been on the AI build for years. And one, I'm going back to the mindsets. One of our mindsets is digitize everywhere. Because we're a pretty young organization, we have the ability to be really intentional and thoughtful about how we build, how we're building this organization. Lots of organizations that didn't build digital first or AI first are going back now and thinking, how do we retool the entire, the consulting term, transform, so to become an AI powered company. And we're in this sort of privileged position that we can build it right from the get-go. But that requires a lot of thought, a lot of innovation, a lot of time and energy and a lot of capability building, because AI is a skill. And we're looking at it in every part of our business: manufacturing, supply chain, legal, finance, every part of our business to become more productive and to serve patients. Again, it goes back to that mission for patients. How do we use AI as a tool to serve patients? And so that we've recognized a couple years ago that that's a skill area that, we're going to hire for it, but we also have to develop it from within. And that's where the AI Academy comes in as part of Moderna University. The AI Academy has multiple programs. It's a full
Can I join?
academy.
I want in. I want to join the AI Academy. I feel like I need.
We talked about our internal development and then pushing beyond our walls for external development too. And AI, I think, is honestly something that we can contribute. AI skill development is something that we can contribute to the biopharma industry and to the world, because it's a set of skills. It's data visualization. It's data preparation. It is AI ethics. It's defining use cases for AI application. It's low code, no code algorithm writing. It's the tools, but it's also the mindsets and the mentalities and of identifying places where AI is going to make your business better or faster or cheaper or more effective or serve patients better, and then moving that through, just like any idea, moving that idea through the system, through leadership, to get to an outcome.
Yeah.
And that's a skill that we're working on in the academy at every level in the company, from operator up to the C-suite. I mean, we are putting a huge investment into the AI Academy and building that capability.
I feel like I've just opened up a can of worms, but I know I've got to let you go now. Where can people connect with you both? If they want to reach out and say hi, where's the best place to find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, LinkedIn is always a great place to start a connection. So I'm on there. I've got a profile, so please feel free to reach out in that way. Amanda Sorrento. So.
And same for me. I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. I try to make a personal connection with every person that reaches out, and have a dialogue, have a chat. share some ideas or information.
Yeah.
And same with me, Noah Rabinowitz. I'm on LinkedIn. I spend a little time on there every single day. So I'd be happy to connect with your listeners, Chris.
I will warn you both now and say, don't blame me when you get loads of messages. So I'm just going to put that out there.
It's okay. It's good.
Bring them on. Happy to get them.
But honestly, no, thank you so much for both of you coming on. Honestly, I love what you're doing. And I think there's so many HR leaders listening right now that are going to be, I'm going to say, they're going to be stealing all your ideas. So I would say, you know, in a good way. And I can't wait to learn more and see the evolution of the university and all of the work you're doing, because it truly is making a difference. So I appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.